Start. All right. Good evening. Sorry for the delay. We are in the middle of the early part of Tefillah. I am gratified by the amount of people who have in person, in WhatsApp, or actually a couple of emails, who've made comments and follow up with questions. It's great. That's part of what I looked for this class to be, as true with all my classes, but especially when it comes to Tefillah, it should be interactive to an extent. And I really appreciate that. So what we're going to talk about tonight, let me just change something here. I'm going to go to screen share. I got a couple of comments on screen share, so I want to see if I can do this the right way today. Just a second. Yeah, let's just do this and this. Oh, try it again. All right, there we go. Okay, we are going to start tonight talking about the next paragraph, very long paragraph or section in davening called Hodu. I will mention as just off to the side that it's not Hodu. We will deal with this at a different date. I mentioned this to you already a few times. We're going to talk about how to properly pronounce words, which unfortunately is not a very common event for a lot of people. Even though colloquially say Hodu, but it's not Hodu, it's Hodu. You may have of Hodu, which means Turkey, and the country is Hodu. But when you're talking about a word, when it says Hodu Lashem Kitov, for example, it's not Hodu Lashem, it's Hodu Lashem, as is true for many, many words that are being mispronounced. And in some cases, and especially when it comes to Shema, makes a significant difference. But we will come back to those as a separate class at some point. I'm not sure exactly when. Okay, so the first thing I want to show you is this. This big paragraph that we're about to do, I want to give a little bit of an introduction. There's a sefer called Nativ Bina. And in Nativ Bina, he discusses meanings behind tefillot, but also positioning. Why is something there? Why do we say it in the first place? So before we even get into the general idea of what it is, why it's said, just this little bit of background. I'm going to kind of run through it and I will translate, starting right over here where it says, Anu Mavi'im. אנו מביאים כמקור להבאת קטע זה מספר דברי הימים בסידור את דבריו של בעל ספר כלבו. So first of all, he says, I'm going to quote to you from a sefer called Kolbo, which is Kolbo la Tefillah, and give an example or a reason why this paragraph or this section is brought, and it's really mostly a quote from Sefer Divrei Hayamim. You'll see why I say mostly when we get to it. And he says as follows, Nahagu liftoach achar midrash Rabbi Yishmael, which according to Nusach Svard and Adot Mizrach, it's immediately the first thing that's said. Again, in concert with this being a Nusach Ashkenaz, it's almost the first thing. Why is it said shortly after Rabbi Yishmael? What's the reason it's said at this point? The whole time, before there was a Beit HaMikdash, there was a Mishkan. David was not zocheh. He did not merit building the Beit HaMikdash, even though he wanted to. It wasn't until his son Shlomo built it that it was built. In the meantime, they had what was called the Yiriyah, the curtain. And this was the section where it was the Mishkan. It could be some form of temporary dwelling place for the Aron, for the Aron Abrit. So when it was during that time period, Tikain David established, he would establish that they would say these words, this mizmor. Now, this mizmor, we're going to see, is actually a combination of two chapters of Tehillim. Not complete chapters, but kind of an amalgam of a couple of chapters. Again, that just he brings other sources. Why? What was the reason David established the saying of this section at that point? At the first daily sacrifice, they would say the first section of Hodu, and then the last korban of the day, the last sacrifice, and they would say another part, a second part of this paragraph. Since the topic, the section of Tefillah before Hodu is about korbanot, is about sacrifices, we also therefore say this mizmor. based on looking into the words that are found in Divrei Yamim, it turns out that David wrote this psalm. He put it in the hands of Asaph and his brothers. Why? The purpose of this particular mizmor and this Hodu is to give thanks to Hashem. When they brought the Aron, I'll give a little background in a minute. When they brought the Aron of Hashem, and they placed it, presented it in the Ohel Moed. Achrei asher hikrivu, or the Mishkan. At the moment after they brought korbanot. So what does this mean? What's this talking about? What is the first of all? What's the general theme? I have slides that are the Hebrew and English of these paragraphs, but before we even do that, there's in English an etymology is the study of words and history of words, an etymological connection between thank and think. I had a thought that this was actually the case, and I looked it up many years ago and found that it is a direct connection, because in order to thank somebody, you have to think about what they did. Sometimes it's a knee-jerk reaction. Someone holds a door for you, thank you. Someone gives you a gift, thank you. We don't necessarily engage our mind. But what is really cool is that the way we say thank you in Hebrew, the way we say gratitude, is akarat hatov, recognizing the good, not seeing the good, but to recognize it. Because sometimes we don't recognize when someone has done something for us good. And unfortunately, sometimes we don't even recognize it when Hashem has done something for us good. So in English, this etymology of these two words really does help us, because to thank, we have to think. I mentioned that this particular section is actually found in two places in Tanakh. One is in Divrei Hayamim. For those of you who remember learning Sefer Shmuel, you know that David made two attempts to bring the Aron, the Ark of the Covenant, to Yerushalayim. The first one was unfortunately a fail. And they left the Aron at a field of an individual for a few months. During that few months period, the fields of this particular individual flourished. And David saw this as a sign it was time to take the Aron to Yerushalayim. He brings the Aron to Yerushalayim and settles in the place which we know now as Ir David, the original place of habitation of the Jews of Yerushalayim was not on Har HaBayit, on Temple Mount, but was actually Ir David. And he brought the Aron there. And when he brought the Aron, the whole process, the whole procedure of bringing it gives us many of the customs that we have today of a Hachnasat Sefer Torah. When we bring a new Sefer Torah to a shul, the dancing and the fire, the candles, and the doing the somersaults like David himself did, giving out candies and treats, which is what they did at that time. And he brings it to you to Ir David. He puts it in the Quasi Mishkan, we'll call it, and then institutes this idea of this chapter in Divrei Hayamim. That's the last book of Tanakh, in English known as Chronicles. Now he wrote it also in two places in Tehillim. It's a combination. Did he say it first in Divrei Hayamim and then write Tehillim? Did he write it in Tehillim and then use it as a quote in Divrei Hayamim? I don't think anyone can tell you. Maybe, but I haven't found the source to prove one way or the other. It's not important. What is important is that these are, in many cases, you'll find in davening that we take psukim from here, psukim there, and they're put together by Chazal, Chachamenu Zichronam Livracha, and they're made into a tefillah. Here, this is almost cut and paste, and it's put here at the beginning of our davening. Now, where did this come from in Divrei Hayamim? I'm not going to read the entire thing here, but just you'll take a look. It says, Bayomahu, Az Natan David Barosh Lhodot Lashem Beyad Asaf Ve'achav. So David made a situation, as it were, for Asaph and his brothers to give thanks to Hashem. And then you see, Hodu Lashem Ki Bishmo, Hodi Avamin Avilotav, and this continues on. But whoops, sorry about that. I kind of have this backwards. Let me just start back here. It says, Vayaviu et Aron Elokim Vayatzigo Oto Betocha Ohel. They brought the Aron of Hashem and placed it, presented it in the Ohel, the tent. Asher Natalo David Vayakivo Lo Tu Shlamim Pnei Elokim. So this is the prelude to this entire section of Hodu is the bringing of the Aron to this area. Now, just let us take a look and make this a little bit smaller now. When we take a look, I'm not going to read the entire thing, but just to give you an idea of the general makeup of the Hodu. In general, the first half, for the most part, the words that are in red we're going to talk about. The highlight is to show you the different sections. So the yellow is telling us the following in a sense. It's broken down into three parts. The first part is where David turns to Bnei Yisrael, as it were, including us today, to tell us to give song to Hashem, to thank Hashem, to praise Hashem in quotes, and to remember the Brit, the special covenant between us and Hashem. That's the first section. The second, which begins here, Hodu Hashem Kiru Vishmo, call upon his name. Then in the section, Chilu Milafanav Kol Haaretz, Aftikon Tevel Batimot, okay, so here we have a section that comes up afterwards, where we talk that the world is going to give thanks to Hashem, even the non-Jewish world. We're also going to have a section, oops, I jumped ahead, sorry, that we go back now to calling upon the Jews to give thanks to Hashem. But what's going on here? We have a section, and by the way, you can actually reinterpret some of these psukim, and actually the sections come out differently. They start at different points. I'm not going to worry about that right now. What I am interested in understanding right now is what is happening here in general. The call on the Jews to thank Hashem, to acknowledge God, to acknowledge the special covenant with Hashem. The call on the entire world to recognize Hashem, to give thanks to Hashem, and then a return to the Jews doing the same thing again. Why is this significant? Again, we go back now to earlier in Navi, and we see in Sefer Melachim Aleph, Perek Chet, chapter 8, where Shlomo HaMelech gives a prayer, a tefillah, for the opening of the Beit HaMikdash. It's a very long chapter, and me personally, I've said this before when I've taught it, it's one of my favorite prakim in all of Navi. It's a beautiful tefillah. If you've never looked at it, never learned it, take a look at it. And in there, it's the same construct. You have Shlomo HaMelech explaining what the purpose of Beit HaMikdash is for Am Yisrael. Then he talks about the whole world. And then he comes back to Am Yisrael. A non-Jew was allowed to bring a korban to the Beit HaMikdash. A certain type of korbanot that they were able to go up to a certain point. They couldn't enter into the entire Beit HaMikdash, but certain area before. Again, that's not important now. But the same idea as we begin our davening at the very beginning is mimicking the structure of how Shlomo HaMelech indoctrinated the opening day, as it were, of the Beit HaMikdash. That was the beginning of the use of the Beit HaMikdash, both in terms of korbanot, sacrifices, and in terms of prayer. So too, at the beginning of our davening, we call upon ourselves to give thanks to Hashem. We also recognize that Hashem is the Melech HaOlam. We've talked about this by the fact that we are not the only people in the world that should be thanking Hashem. But we go back to Am Yisrael, again, as Shlomo HaMelech did in his prayer, to reinforce the fact that we have a special connection to Hashem. I want to look at a few phrases in this section. One is the beginning picks up on a theme we talked about at the end of last week. Hodu Hashem Kiru Vishmo, right? Which means you look in the English, give thanks to Hashem, proclaim his name. How does that give thanks to Hashem? By saying his name. I go around and sing Hashem's name. So obviously it could be as simple as something through brachot, but it's even greater than that. When we are looking to magnify the name of Hashem around the world, where it's the Baruch Hashem, thank Hashem, and always inserting Hashem's name. This is an important aspect, which you've already talked about. I'm not going to get into it again because we talked about it a lot in Baruch Shemar, the name of Hashem, the Yud Kei Vav Kei name, the name of Ado and Nai. And it is, we use Hashem's name in our speech, in our talking, whether it's Baruch Hashem, or even when I've had occasion over the years, especially when I was living in Chutz La'aretz and talking to someone who's not Jewish, and say, yeah, Bezrat Hashem, or Mirz Hashem, or God willing. But what they didn't, and I just changed it right in English. And every once in a while, when I would say something like, okay, we'll meet tomorrow at 10:30, God willing, I had multiple times where someone was not Jewish. I mean, they knew I was, but they say, wow, that's pretty cool. I said, what is? And something I took for granted. So, well, you just kind of said, well, God willing. I said, yeah, because everything's in the hands of God. I said, I never really thought about that. So that's this. That's Hodu Lashem Kiru Vishmo. Hodiu Va'amim Alilotav. Make his deeds known among the nations. So we have a job, right, to spread the word of Hashem. And by doing so, we are accomplishing what David Melech is calling upon us to do, what Hashem himself is called upon us to do as well. And when we say Hitalalu B'Shem Kodsho, the next part that's in red, the English here is interesting. It says, take pride in uttering his holy name. What does that mean, to take the Hitalel? So there's a pasuk in Yeshayahu, Al Yitalel Chacham Bechochmatos, Yeshayahu. I have to think about it because I caught it off the top of my head. But it means that I take glory in his name. But again, what does this mean? So if you know a little bit of Hebrew, you know that verbs have what are called binyanim. A binyan is a construct, the way a word is used. For example, lirchotz, to wash. The hitrachetz means it's reflexive, you wash yourself. So the word hitalelu is in fact, lehitalel is reflexive. So what does that mean? That it's that you take pride or glory, b'shem kodsho, in his holy name. It's the idea that when you give praise to Hashem, and again, we discussed that that's the way we say it colloquially, even though God doesn't need our praise, that what you're doing is you're also taking it to heart. You're using that reflexively on you. This is something similar we saw in the end of Baruch Shemar in the name of Rav Shamshon Fuller Hirsch. Similar idea. And what is it we're also supposed to do? You take a look, it says, Sapru v'goyim et kivodo, tell his, among the goyim, among the nations, about his honor. B'chol ha'amim niflotav, among the nations, tell about his wonders. Now, if you look in the English, which is right over here, you'll see that it uses the exact same words in English, which are, okay, won't work. Recount his glory among the nations, his wonder among all the peoples. Okay, now notice here it's nations, goyim, and here it says amim, which could be people, could be nations. So what is the difference between goyim and amim? We also know that Am Yisrael is known as Am Yisrael, the people of Israel. We're also known as Goy Echad Ba'aretz. We're also known as a Mamlechet Kohanim, a nation of, or a kingdom of priests, the Goy Kadosh, and a holy nation. So what do these terms mean? So there's actually a difference, I shouldn't say obviously, but there is a difference between these two terms. The word that right now what I'm using is Rav Hirsch, again, Rav Shamshon for Hirsch's comment. He says as follows. He claims that the word goy is from the Shoresh Gimel Vav, Gav or Go, which refers to guf, means a body. And he says that a nation, when it's referred to as a goy, is more of a political description. Now, put aside for a second, I know goy echad ba'aretz, the goy kadosh, about Am Yisrael. Put that aside. He said that it's a more of a political, societal, just say, let's go with political distinction. So you have maybe a nation that lives in Micronesia. I keep picking on them in different classes. A nation that lives in Africa, a nation that lives in the United States, whatever it might be, the Goyim. We use the term nowadays, of course, as non-Jewish. It's not a slur. It's just what the English would call, in English, Gentiles. What's an Am? What's an Am? Am is spelled Ayin Mem. The same word with instead of an A patach, a chirik, an E, is im. What does im mean? It means with. Now that's a different story. Instead of it being a political description of a people, they live, let's say, Americans, Canadians, Chinese, they live in a certain country. Now you're talking more of an ethnic or social grouping. They are with each other together for a specific reason. For those of you who ever learned or taught Ezrachut civics here in Israel for Bagrut. You'll know a little bit more, understand a little bit more what I'm talking about, the different types of divisions. I'm not going to get into all that now. But what is it that we are that the other nations aren't? Number one, we are also a goy. We're also a nation, but a different type. We're a goy kadosh. We're a holy nation. We are a goy echad ba'aretz. We are unique in this world. What makes us unique? We say Hashem, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem echad. Mentioned last week already that echad is not the same meaning of echad all that we can say. Use the silver screen setting. I need to be a little bit more. Oh, go back to this. There. Okay. The echad of Am Yisrael is the echad of Hashem in a different way. Echad by Hashem is there's no, you can't compare the echad of Hashem to anything. We in this case, the goy echad ba'aretz, which we say on Shabbat at Mincha, makes us unique. We are special, unique people. And in both cases, we have a job. In both cases, we have to spread the word of Hashem to our own people and to the world. This mimics, again, the beginning of this particular slide as well. If you take a look at the bottom of the screen, you'll notice a similar statement made twice, but with a different word involved, or words. Romamu Hashem Elokeinu, exalt Hashem our God, v'yishtachavu l'adom raglav kadoshu, and bow, in English says prostrate yourselves at his footstool. Romamu Hashem Elokeinu v'yishtachavu, and then it says the same thing. Give praise, exalt, it says in English, Hashem, and prostrate yourself or bow l'har kodsho, to his holy mountain. Ki kadosh Hashem Elokeinu, because Hashem is holy. What is the difference between these two bowings? First of all, we have to understand the word l'hishtachavot. L'hishtachavot does not mean, as we say in English, to bow. The word he uses here that I copied and pasted, prostrate, is the right word. What is the difference between bowing and prostrating? To bow means to bow at the waist, or as the British will do, the new way of bowing to the queen, then now to the king, was just lowering of the head and raising the head, is what's called in Hebrew pishut yadayim v'raglayim. Pishut yadayim v'raglayim is literally lying down on the ground, hands straight out, feet behind you, laying flat on the ground. I did that once in my life. The day we landed, when we made Aliyah, got off the plane, and I know many people bow and kiss the ground. I decided that wasn't enough for me. I decided to lie down on the ground, do pishut yadayim v'raglayim, and on the next day, woke up to find my picture lying flat on the ground on the second page of the Jerusalem Post. But what was it used for? It was used for the Kohen Gadol, for the Melech. When the Melech would walk by, you didn't just bow, you did pishut yadayim v'raglayim, you laid on the ground. Not in all circumstances, in many circumstances. So first we have to understand, when we're talking about bowing to Hashem, we're talking about complete subjugation physically with our body. Second, we don't do that now during Daven. The only time we do it is on Rosh Hashanah, in some cases once, and on Yom Kippur a few times, depending on your nusach, depending on the shul. As an aside, in parentheses, very often you'll find people will take what I call a Kleenex, but a tissue, a bag or something, and put it on their knees so that they don't get their knees dirty when they bow on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. That's nice, but you're missing a very important thing. When you put your head down on the ground, you're not allowed to put your head down on stone. Let's say, for example, you're on a tile floor and you bowed on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and you put your head on the ground. That's an isur. You're not allowed to do that. It's called even maskit. So you have to put something by your forehead when you bow, even if it's not a stone floor. Okay. So anyways, scaring the daylights out of you. Go right ahead. Yes, I wasn't expecting someone. Yes, go ahead.
Do you consider handmade tile to be stone or a mixture of other things?
It's look, technically it's a mixture of other things, but the way that
I thought it was cut stone,
yeah.
like and so you're
it it has the din of stone as far as the bowing, putting your head down. I asked the question by the koto, actually.
But that's a different substance than what we have in our shuls.
Mm-hmm.
And if we have porcelain tiles,
right?
Okay, I think that you should clarify.
Okay, so the truth is, it makes no difference as far as the tachlis is that, because if it's porcelain or linoleum or rubber or tile, stone, you still have to put something down by your head. The difference would be only as an isur doraita, correct?
You're saying linoleum is the same as stone?
As far as the halacha, you have to put something between your head and the ground. Yes,
but
it doesn't make it
linoleum is the thing between that and stone.
I understand.
I'll discuss it with you later. I'm just telling
you.
I think I have other ideas on this.
Okay,
we'll discuss it.
I'm not talking a scientific answer. I'm talking halacha.
I'm not either. I'm talking about halacha too.
Okay, good. So
I will mute myself and I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Okay. So when you do this, the bowing, it talks about two different things, though. It says Hadom Raglav, which is a footstool, and Har Kodsho, his holy mountain. These are two extremes. One is we're looking at from Hashem's perspective that Hashem, we say Hashem, on the Shabbat of Rosh Chodesh, Haftarah is Hashemayim Kisi Va'aretz Hadom Raglai, that the heavens are my seat and the earth is my footstool, says Hashem. And on the one hand, we're talking about the perspective of the earth, where we are, so to speak, the low end of the totem pole, where Hashem says, we say that from here, we will give praise to Hashem and bow to Hashem. And on the other hand, we also, no matter, even we're at the top, which is the holiest place in the world, the holy mountain, i.e. Har HaBayit, we also give praise to Hashem. You might say, well, wait a second, I'm in such a holy place. By dint of the fact I'm just there, I've gone on Har HaBayit. Why would I need to? I don't think anybody that hears this would ever think that way, but one might. It's saying that in every single case, we have to give praise to Hashem. We have to exalt Hashem at every level. We unfortunately have had a number of terror attacks recently. And when we say someone's name who's been murdered, Kiddush Hashem, whether it's in a terror attack or in any other way, after their name, we say, Hashem yinkom damo, may Hashem avenge his blood. Spelled in English, H-Y-D, in Hebrew you see Hey Yud Daled, Hashem yinkom damo, may Hashem avenge his blood. So I want to talk for a few minutes about the topic of vengeance, because we talk about it not only here, which you'll see here, El Nekamot Hashem, El Nekamot Tofia. Hashem is the one who takes that vengeance. We're asking that Hashem to reveal himself taking vengeance, but also in Shmona Esrei, but more so in Avarachamim. Ashkenazim in the Sachsfard say Avarachamim, most Shabbatot, not every single one. Goes back to the time period of the Crusaders. And we talk about Nikama, vengeance. There's one thing that we cannot, as human beings, do that we think we can. We think we can take vengeance against someone who's done something to us. Let's just take a simple example, not murder. Someone pushes us and hurts us. So I think that by taking revenge and I push the person back and I hurt them, that I have avenged what's happened. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know all the ramifications of what happened when this person pushed me. I don't know. Now I'll take it to the extreme. Person gets murdered. And another individual decides they're going to take revenge and do something and potentially kill the other person who did the killing. Let's just use that as an example. Whereas it might feel like your person took revenge, you didn't take revenge. You did something, you got some vengeance, but you didn't take revenge. Because revenge, nikama, in the truest sense of the word, is 100%. It's a form of nikama, of vengeance. It is not nikama. Only Hashem can take complete revenge. And what does that mean? Let's take the example of the D family, Hashem Yinkom Damam. Every single Jew that is killed al Kiddush Hashem, whether it's the Holocaust, the time of the Inquisition, whether it's a pigua nowadays, is tragic. And we also refer to that as Hashem, let's say, Hashem Yinkom Damo. Let's take the D family. And let's say that the three people were killed as a result of these three people being killed. Three terrorists were killed. It's not revenge. It's a form of a small, tiny bit of revenge. Why do I say that? Because what did they do? What did these Yamach Shemams do when they killed these three people? They destroyed worlds. They destroyed future families. They destroyed many, many people. So that you can't take revenge for. There is no leveling the playing field for that. That is in Hashem's eyes, which is why we say in Avarachamim that we want Hashem to do Leinenu. We wanted to do it in front of us to see. Notice for us to be able to understand and to really see Hashem take revenge for his children. And I'm going to put it into human terms for a minute. Why would Hashem do that? I mean, that's a rhetorical question. Why would Hashem take revenge? So assume for a moment that, I won't say any of you, but a person's child is walking down the street. Another guy comes along and beats up this child. What would be your instinct? First, of course, if you come nearby and it's happening, is to protect your child first, and then whatever you're going to do to that other person. And again, even if you do something, first of all, just be careful because you don't want to do something that makes your life much worse. Your actions will not 100% one for one equal what was happening to your child. But your instinct as a parent is to protect your child and to want to do something. And that's what Hashem does. We don't see it. We don't see it. We may see sometimes, we may see a little piece, but we don't ever nowadays in this world see the complete revenge. And we're asking that Hashem take revenge. And it should be, if you look at this word over here, reveal yourself. That's Hofia, El Nekamot Hofia. Want the God of vengeance to reveal himself. Where in Shemona Esrei do we use this idea? Not so much of vengeance, but taking out on our enemies. So that's your homework. You can take a look. But what we also see in this next pasuk here, we see Hinasei Shofet Haaretz Hashed Gemul Al Geim. What's Gemul? What does that mean? Gemul is recompense, which means complete measure for measure what was done. It's the English says repay the arrogant their reward. It's an oxymoron because a reward means in this case something that I don't think they would really want such a reward. You take a look here. What is it that's special? I use that term in quotes. Special about nikama. What is special about vengeance from Hashem? Gemara tells us, me'ata. Gedola nekama shenitna ben shtei otiyot, shenemar el nekamot Hashem. Nekama, vengeance, is so great, it is given, it's mentioned between two names of Hashem. We just said, El, Nekamot, Ado, and Nai. Right? So we have the word Nekama is placed between the name of Hashem, the name El, and the name Ado and Nai. So by doing that, the Gemara intuits that the power of vengeance is so strong that it only belongs to Hashem in the truest sense of the word. And in addition to that, we also have to know, Hashem himself says, Lina akam v'shilein la'et tamut raglam, ki karov yom edam v'chash atidot lamo. By the way, if you come across this word lamed mem vav, it's always pronounced lamo. Usually, if it's at the end of the pasuk, for sure. To be my vengeance and recompense at the time that their foot falters, yea, their day of disaster is near them and destiny rushes upon them. What does it mean? Li nakam. Vengeance is mine. Hashem says that. Does it mean that we shouldn't do anything to someone who hurts us? No. The Rambam clearly says that when you're hurt, you're supposed to do something to even the score. But we have to understand that it's only Hashem's able to do that nekama, the proper nekama. In addition to that, we say, as I mentioned before, in Avarachamim, it is said by Ashkenazim, Yivada bagoyim leinenu, nikmadam avadecha hashafuch. They were asking that the blood of your servants, meaning Jews, the servants of Hashem, that were spilled, Hashem should take revenge, and this should be known among the non-Jewish nations as well. It shouldn't just be obvious to us, it should be obvious to everyone. This is what has happened. Move this up for a second. Two more psukim. והיה מדי חודש בחודשו, מדי שבת בשבתו, יבוא כל בשר להשתחוות לפניי, אמר השם. And on Rosh Chodesh, and after Rosh Chodesh, and Shabbat and after Shabbat, all humans will come and worship me, says Hashem. V'yatz'u v'ra'u b'figrei ha'anashim. They will go out and look upon the corpses of the men, haposhim bi, who rebelled against me. Ki tolatam lo tamut, because their worms shall not die. V'isham lo tichbeh, nor their fire will be quenched. V'ayu de'raon l'chol basar, and there shall be horror to all flesh. This is a pretty scary couple of psukim. What's this in Yeshayahu? Talking about the Messianic time, that we will see what happens to those who caused us the terrible tragedies that cost us. We believe in the Mashiach. We believe in Tchiat HaMetim. We also believe that Hashem rewards, that's part of the Anima, it means Hashem rewards every single good act and takes revenge, gives a punishment for every bad thing unless there is tshuva that is done, unless a person repents. But we also have to understand that doesn't just apply to the Jewish people. Hashem makes sure to take vengeance, and we will, at some point, according to Yeshayahu, see the vengeance of Hashem. I want to read something to you for a moment here. It says, the meaning of Hashem, as in Kel Nekamot Hashem, means that we want Hashem to bring order to the world. What is the purpose of Nekama? To make us feel better? Like, wow, they get this to us, now we did that to them? On one hand, on the simplest level, I imagine yes. But it's also to bring a balance to the world. We wanted to let us witness this, to rectify wrongs, and Hashev Gemul Al Geim, to give them recompense, to pay the bad guys what they deserve. And we say, L'Hashem HaYeshua Al-Machab Yechatak HaSela. We have already suffered. We suffered a full measure in any kind of pigua and any kind of thing that went wrong. And we want for Hashem to do for us what we can't do for ourselves. And that's to bring us complete, not just vengeance, but nechama as well. Okay, I'm going to mention something that I'll talk about just for a minute, and then we're going to stop, because that's going to be a shir by itself. And that's a word. There is a word that we use in davening. There's a word we use in it appears over 70 times in Tehillim, and only one of the places in Tanakh, it appears in Sefer Chavakuk, which is one of the 12 minor prophets of Treasar. It appears there 3 times. And it is probably one of the words in all of our liturgy that we say in Tefillah and in Tehillim that has the most amount of discussion as to what it really means. I'm not going to get into it tonight. I'll just give you a couple of tiny insights. According to some, and we'll see next week, Bezrat Hashem, much more in depth, it's a musical note, because it was meant to be a musical note, as was Tehillim, musical. According to some, it's an exclamation. According to some, it's supposed to modify the word that came or the phrase that came before it. There is absolutely no agreement on what it really means. Usually, if you look at an English translation, it just says Selah, S-E-L-A-H, an exclamation point. According to some, like I said, it's an exclamation, like, oh, whatever it might be. what we'll do next week, it'll take us, I don't know if the entire class, but a good part of it. I'm going to talk about this word because let me just take off a screenshot for a moment and go here to view. Because what happens with our davening is while we look at the macro, we want to look at the big picture of what a tefillah is about. We also sometimes gain a tremendous amount of insight when we look at the micro. We look at a word and see. For example, I'm not going into tonight, obviously, nor next week, the word amen. What do we say? What's amen all about? We'll get to that eventually late in the Sukkah de Zimra. We'll get to amen. And other words that we use, and other phrases that we use. So the word Selah, we use in Shemona Esrei 3 times a day. Actually, it's 6 times because it appears a couple times late in Shemona Esrei. It'd be good to know what it means and what's its function. So we'll deal with that Bezrat Hashem next week. In the meantime, as always, if you have comments, please let me know. I will post tonight or tomorrow this class, and feel free to be in touch with any follow-up questions. Have a great evening, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.